Hi everyone, it's Laura here and welcome back to my YouTube channel. In today's video I'm gonna show you how to make a fun trio of shaker cards that will be perfect to give to your loved ones for Valentine's Day. For this project I used different stamp sets by Fawn. I used the Octopi My Heart set, the Winter Unicorn set and the Winter Otter set, and I stamped them with Memento Tuxedo Black ink on some Nina Solar White cardstock, and I am now coloring them in with my Spectrum Noir markers. And the fun part of today's project for me was to try and stretch my supplies, because actually only the Octopi My Heart stamp set was part of Valentine's release, whereas the Winter Unicorn and the Winter Otter stamp sets were both winter and Christmas themed. But I thought it would be fun to sort of try and be creative and use them on a Valentine's project. And the way I went about it was to create little couples for my shaker cards, so I will be using each image twice, even if now you don't see the second otter and the second unicorn, because I had them already stamped and die cut from a different project, so I will be using them a little bit later. You will see them a little bit later during this video. And I will be using similar colors for each couple, but the guys will be colored up in darker colors, whereas the girls will be colored up in lighter shades and will also have a ribbon on their head. And I always like to use these tiny additional images, be it a ribbon or a little flower, and add it next to the ears or on the head of some of the critters, and this immediately makes them look like they are girls. And if you instead put them on the critter's neck, this immediately conveys the feeling that that's a boy critter. So these are, tiny little tricks to stretch your supplies and have fun with, additional little images that come in your stamp sets. As for my color palette, I'll be using reds and pinks, as well as some neutrals for the otters and the unicorn's fur. And I will also be adding some accents in aqua that will tie nicely with the shaker's backgrounds. And I am adding my shading as if the light source is on the top right, so that the shadows will be mostly concentrated on the bottom left of the images. I will now leave you with some music to enjoy the rest of the coloring process. If you're not interested in this part, you can skip at the minute that will appear on screen right about now to watch me just put this card together. And if you have any feedback, positive or negative, on my videos, please leave it in the comments down below, because I'm always trying to produce nice content and your opinion is really, really important to me. So I hope you guys enjoy the rest of the coloring, and I'll catch you guys later. I then went ahead and cut 3 heart-shaped panels from some watercolor cardstock using a die by Sizzix, and this will be the backgrounds of my shakers. That, by the way, was Winsor & Newton watercolor cardstock. And for the front of my shakers, I'll be using some pattern paper by Doodlebug. I am basically creating a frame by stacking 2 heart-shaped dies, so the larger one is the same size as the watercolor panels I just cut, and the smaller one is just the next smaller die in this Sizzix die set. And I am taping them together with some washi tape so that I can cut multiple sheets of pattern paper, because I am making 3 different shaker cards. And by keeping the dies taped together, I am sure that all my frames will look the same. As I mentioned, I am using pattern paper by Doodlebug, and I use the Kitten's Mittens and the Cream and Sugar paper pads. And here you can see how the frames will look once I stack them on top of my backgrounds. For the backgrounds themselves, I am using Distress inks, and I'll be creating 2 ocean type backgrounds, which I am creating over here. And for those I am using Cracked Pistachio, Mermaid Lagoon and Peacock Feathers, and I basically smooshed the ink pads on my Tonic Studios Easy Clean Matte. I activated the inks with some water, and then you saw me, I just flipped my panels on top to add some color to them, and this way I get a nice texture. I am speeding up the drying process with my heat gun, and I am making sure to apply the heat from the front and from the back so that I minimize the effects of warping from the heat. For my sky background, which will be the one where the unicorns are flying in, I am using different colors of Distress inks because I wanted a lighter and a more kind of a true blue look. So I used Mermaid Lagoon, Salty Ocean and Tumbled Glass, and I added less ink than in the previous backgrounds, and I also dabbed off some excess with a paper towel because this gives a texture that looks like clouds. And to add even more interest to my backgrounds, I'll be using some stencils, and I will add some more shapes using Distress inks. For the sky background, I am using the Cloud Stencil by My Favorite Things and Tumbled Glass Distress ink, and I'm doing some ink blending, moving the stencil around to get some nice variation in the cloud pattern on the background, and adding the clouds all the way to the top of my panel. For one of the ocean panels, which is the one where the octopi will be, I wanted to create some sort of wave in the ocean pattern, and I decided to use this stencil. This is also by My Favorite Things. It's called the Hills and Drifts stencils, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, I will list all the supplies in my blog as always, and you will find it linked in the description box. And here I'm adding some Distress ink in Peacock Feathers and trying to create this wavy pattern all over the panel. And here I tore the paper a little bit with my washi tape, so I tried to hide that with my ink blender by adding a little bit more ink. And finally, for the background where the otters will be swimming, I used this Curvy Lines stencil by createasmilestamps, and I'm adding all 3 colors of Distress inks that I used on the background, so Cracked Pistachio, Mermaid Lagoon and Peacock Feathers. And I thought this stencil was perfect to give the impression of waves on the surface of a body of water. And as a final touch, I added some water droplets, which I am now dabbing off with a microfiber cloth. I then cut some acetate using this die by Sizzix, and I will be adhering this to the back of my frames. I will show you the assembly for just one shaker card, but it's the same for all 3 of them. I just thought you didn't need the repetition. And to create enough dimension for my shaker elements to move around, I am using a double layer of foam tape, which I am cutting into a thin strip. And I am going to remove the backing from both sides of my foam tape strip, because this way I can bend it around and follow the shape of my shaker front. and I don't have to fidget with cutting little pieces and making sure that they are tucked next to each other. So this is very easy and kind of a seamless method to apply foam tape to curved die cuts. And I'm also adding a couple more pieces for extra support. I dabbed my anti-static powder tool on top of my work surface, and I'm picking up the powder that fell this way with a paintbrush, and I'm applying it to the sides of the foam tape so that the little shaker bits will not cling to it. I am using some Sequins by Craftin Divas and also some seed beads for some extra fun. I really love making shaker cards. They are just, I don't know, among my favorites. Anyway, I will list the name of the sequins in my blog post. And I am also adding a few details with my white gel pen to all the critters. So on the cheeks of the unicorns and the otters, and on the, heads of the octopi. And then I will adhere everything to the front of my shakers. I like to use dry adhesive when I work on acetate, because I feel it's a little bit cleaner, and this Crafter's Companions one, it's like sort of stable enough once you push it down, but you also have enough time to move it around and position the images the way you want them. So I just did not push it very firmly at first, and then once I found the right arrangement, I made sure to adhere it properly. I used Multi-Medium Matte by Ranger to add a little ribbon on the female otter's head, as well as this larger heart. And then I'll be using the Crafter's Companion tape runner to adhere the tiny hearts, because I felt it was a little bit less fidgety that way. For my sentiments, I'll be doing some selective inking so that I end up with 2 colors on each sentiment. The one that I'm using right now comes from the Milk and Cookie stamp set, also by Fawn, and I am using some post-it sticky notes to mask off the word together, and I'm inking up with Memento Tuxedo Black ink the part that reads "We Belong." I will now mask off the part that I just stamped and ink up the word together with Memento Dewdrops in Love Letters, and I'm left with these nice sentiments to adhere to my shaker cards. The "We Belong Together" one will go with the otters because it's just perfect for that. The "You Octopi My Heart" will go with the octopi. This sentiment comes with this octopus stamp set. And finally, for the unicorns, I did a little bit of altering, and instead of "All I Want for Christmas Is You," which is the sentiment that comes with the Winter Unicorn stamp set, I just stamped "All I Want Is You." And finally, it's time to work on the card bases. I cut 6 panels out of white cardstock with the same heart-shaped die that I use for my shakers. And I scored 3 of them like I'm doing right now. And this will basically create some flaps that will allow the card to open. You will see that in a moment. I made sure to fold these flaps properly. I added some glue, and then on each of them I added one flat, so to say, heart-shaped panel. And this way I created my heart-shaped card base, which opens up very nicely, as you can see, thanks to those flaps that we scored. And now I can finally go ahead and adhere each shaker to its own card base. I am using Tombow Mono Multi-Glue because it gives me a little bit of time to wiggle things in place and make sure that I aligned everything nicely. And to finish off my cards, I'll be adding some glitter with my Spectrum Noir clear overlay pen and a little bit of dimension and detail with my white gel pen. And here you can see the sparkle against the light. And that's it for today's video. If you guys enjoyed it, please let me know in the comments below, give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel. You can visit my blog for the full list of supplies, and I'll catch you guys soon with the next one. Ciao!